You've probably seen the amount of changes that have happened where AI has just kind of burst onto the scene and folks are asking about it day and night. How have you seen the change in AI being used over time, either through Fractal or from your personal experience?
Yeah, I think we're in a very big transitional phase right now. Unless people have quaint fireplaces at home, no one's using wood or coal or wax to light, heat, or cook at home. Everyone uses electricity. There were concerns around security. What if I get killed when touching a wire or flipping a switch? To when it's ubiquitous today that we flip the switch and something turns on or does what we intended to do.
Welcome to a new podcast episode from the Fireside Chat series, a highlight of the Deal Forum at the prestigious New York Athletic Club in the heart of New York City. We are making our Fireside Chats available to those who couldn't be with us in person and for those who would like to experience and listen to it again. Hello there, M&A Advisor community. This is Roger Aguinaldo, and welcome back to the M&A Advisor podcast. Since 1998, the M&A Advisor's mission is to recognize achievements, provide thought leadership, and connect professionals in mergers and acquisitions for the purpose of improving your deal-making craft and accelerating your deal flow. We are so glad you're joining us for this insightful and inspiring podcast conversation curated for mergers and acquisitions professionals. Whether you're an aspiring deal maker, a seasoned professional, or just curious about the world of mergers and acquisitions, you'll find something valuable and relevant in our podcast. Our goal is to bring you the best insights, stories, and tips from the experts who've been there and done that, so you can learn from their successes and mistakes and take your deal-making skills to the next level. But before we dive into today's episode, we have a small favor to ask you. If you enjoy listening to our podcast and find it useful, please consider following us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube, and subscribing to our M&A Alerts newsletter. You can find the links in the description below. This will help us reach more people like you and grow our community of M&A professionals. It will also let us know that you appreciate our work and want us to keep producing more quality content for you. Plus, you'll never miss an episode, and you'll always be in the loop with the latest trends in the M&A world to improve and accelerate your deal making. So please follow us. You are the reason we do what we do, and we couldn't do it without you. And now for today's podcast.
Happy to introduce our next session. This is a session on modern tech and M&A. Who will win the race to AI adoption? And this is going to be hosted by Satish Raman. He's the Chief Strategy Officer at Fractal AI. And he'll be in conversation with Sohail Jooma, co-founder at Bomerge.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for taking the time to take your whole day to meet with us. So we'll try to make this as conversational as possible. We'll also have a few minutes left towards the end for any questions. We're actually talking to a real AI expert here, so we'll be sure to use as much time towards that. So I think just for a quick intro on ourselves before we set the conversation, I'm Sohail. I'm one of the co-founders of Bomerge. So we're an M&A management platform. We help companies manage their M&A operations from deal flow to M&A integration, hopefully saving folks time and energy doing tracking synergies, milestones, things like that. And I'll let Satish introduce himself and see where the AI piece is coming from his experience.
All right, thanks. Hi, everyone. I thought I saw Andrew Kelly floating somewhere over here. He's conveniently ducked this conversation. But I'm Satish Raman. I've been with Fractal for 7 years. We're an AI solutions and software firm. We have a presence all the way from Sydney to Seattle, making stops about 11 places along the way, about 4,500 people, serving largely Fortune 500 and 1,000 companies. The company itself has been in existence for almost 25 years now. So when we started talking about AI back in the day, it was a bit like selling shoes in sub-Saharan Africa, right? People could traverse long distances, had a lot of stamina, had the energy, and were able to do everything to go long distances to get water, to go to school. Um, but when they realized that the shoes could help them increase their stamina, traverse even longer distances, make the commute shorter, the adoption of shoes took on. And that explains why most of the long distance runners who are successful wear shoes and come from sub-Saharan Africa. So that in a 60,000 foot level is the story of AI. It's about adoption and ease of use. And we should talk a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. And tagging along to that insight, having been at Fractal for a good period of time, you've probably seen the amount of changes that have happened where AI has just kind of burst onto the scene and folks are asking about it day and night. How do they use it? How do they get ahead from a competitive standpoint? Um, how have you seen the change in AI being used over time, either through Fractal or from your personal experience?
Yeah, I think we're in a very big transitional phase right now on two or three counts. Um, unless people have quaint fireplaces at home, no one's using wood or coal or wax to light, heat, or cook at home, right? Everyone uses electricity. But the period of transition from moving from an analogous source of heat, light, energy to an electrical one was not easy. There were concerns around security. What if I get killed when touching a wire or flipping a switch? To when it's ubiquitous today that we flip a switch and something turns on or does what we intended to do. Um, so it started off with experimentation. It started off with a lot of what I'd call spare change that people had in their budgets because they were like, hey, we'd like to experiment with what this AI thing is and what it can do for us. Two people realizing that, oh, electricity is probably a better way to run everything than relying on traditional sources of creating that kind of energy. The second aspect of it from a transitional standpoint, which is also one of the hurdles that will vanish a generation or two from now, is our understanding of the language of AI, right? Growing up through kindergarten and middle school, high school, etc., we learned math, we learned sciences, we learned the arts, English. We're conversant in the language of those subjects, right? So then it's a choice for us to either go into applied math or into nuclear physics, but we at least have a basic grounding of what it takes. Now, along comes AI. No one's been taught coding or programming, through elementary school, middle school, high school. And it's at best a choice that you make at a narrow end of your collegiate career. And it creates a whole bunch of things that people like you and me that aren't conversant in that language are looking at it and saying, okay, I can see magic happening, but should I trust it? But as that becomes a subject to rigor in schools and classes from an early age, a generation or two from now, that trust aspect will go away because people will understand what's going on over there.
And that's a good point because the way I think about AI is almost like an accelerant to what you already have today. So if the foundation of an organization or how folks are going about the industry that they work in is in a good shape, then AI should accelerate what's already in place for them. However, if AI is, or if the organization is in a spot where there's like leaks everywhere, a lot of cultural issues, things that could bring a company down, I feel like AI would probably accelerate that further. Do you see that kind of something similar, or do you see it differently?
Yeah, that's I think the question on everyone's minds, right? So I'll make the distinction between the skepticism to AI from a consumer standpoint and an enterprise standpoint. Um, individuals are already fully immersed with AI assuming more than 90% of you use some Apple product, the fact that it lies underneath the device that you use and it's ubiquitous, you don't realize that you're actually interacting with AI. And even if it does, let's take a stock app or something that's giving you recommendations that, you trade on, what you're bringing down at most is yourself and maybe your family unit. It's confined to 5 people, right? But now imagine the same risk at an enterprise level where there are, several thousands of families that are dependent on the enterprise to continue to thrive. Those risks get magnified and are exponential. So it's fair to have the skepticism at an enterprise level, but at a consumer level, I think we're already fully immersed in that today. It's only a question of how do you translate that and what really are the guardrails for free flow and passage of AI to permeate how we lead our lives and how we conduct business on a daily basis.
Yeah, it's so funny you touched on this because we know AI is the buzzword of the century today, but especially if you've been in tech or you're familiar with this technology, it's been around for decades, right? When Google started, the search engine is not just like something you search and then it magically pops up. Like it has underlying areas of AI and search indexing and things like that that's been around since the 90s. Um, and so it's interesting to see kind of the last 5-10 years where it starts to kind of become more of a necessity or something to help companies and even families and consumers get ahead on things. You talked about guardrails and the ability to kind of make sure AI is used in the right manner. What do you think are some of the hurdles to having a full set of AI adoption guidelines for companies and even at the consumer level?
Yeah, what we've been observing in, when we work with and speak with CEOs and CXOs at Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies is boiling down fundamentally to what trust is. Can I trust this enough to let it either augment some of the work that I'm doing, make decisions autonomously, or help in ways that there can be a fair collaboration and a trusted collaboration between man and machine, right? So the related analogy, to make it simple, is everyone's focused on building a super fast engine that can propel down the highway, but we don't have wide expressways. We certainly don't have an efficient braking system, and we don't have seat belts and enough airbag for that engine to really deliver and fulfill on its promise of what full potential it can deliver on. So to that extent, it has to do with trust and safety, security, understanding data parameters, getting comfortable with the fact and scaling up gradually, as opposed to saying it's all or nothing, right? A decade ago, it was digital transformation. Today, it's AI transformation. Tomorrow, it could be something else. But fundamentally, I think we're at the cusp of what, could be the fifth, I don't even know if you can call it an industrial revolution anymore, but a fifth revolution where we've moved from only humans making decisions to humans being in the loop of making decisions, but a whole substrata of decisions are made using AI.
And that's a good point because I think there's always going to be a concern of using AI or using something to be fully autonomous. There should always be some sort of human intervention at some point of the step when using it. You mentioned trust and safety when using or potentially using AI. In what case does it not make sense to use AI at all?
Yeah. Hey, I would say till we get to a place where we can trust, understand, and have the ability to control what the algorithm does, subjugating that algorithm to our will and desires is critical, right? So any one-way door decision, I won't hand over to an AI, right? If it is not a retractable or reversible decision, not for AI, not today. The second is just fundamentally our own research, which suggests that we have taken several centuries, we as humans have taken several centuries to get atop the food pyramid in terms of who controls the resources and everything that goes on in this planet. I don't think we're in a tearing hurry to cede that to something that we've invented that could take control over us. So there will be that inherent bias that we as human beings have to subjugate this technology and control it and contain it so it doesn't get out of hand. Now, there's always a risk and there's always the corner case that it could get out of hand, which is why, at least in the current frame, till we understand it a lot better and it's not centralized in the hands of a few, as is turning out to be the case today, that no one-way door decisions should be handed over to AI.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense because I'm seeing teams in different organizations, in different sectors have kind of like an AI safety team or a team that regulates the use of AI. So I think that makes a lot of sense as well. Given that we're at an M&A event, maybe we can shift gears there. How do you see, because I always think about how M&A and AI can kind of coexist without going overboard. Have you thought about that in terms of where M&A, AI can coexist and how it could make the lives of folks in M&A easier?
Yeah, so I'd love to share my perspective and the team that I work with, our collective perspective on using AI. But you're the expert; you've built a product and platform, so I'd flip the same question back to you after I'm done. Um, but as a firm at Fractal, we're big believers in eating our own dog food, right? So not just in market facing, front facing growth initiatives, but obviously a whole bunch of internal initiatives, whether it's recruitment, training, finance and accounting, legal, regulatory compliance. We've been infusing what we take to our clients because the best proof point is to say, hey, if they say, wait, have you done it before? We're like, hey, we're doing it ourselves, right? So we have for the longest time been using what today could be called rudimentary machine learning to screen for targets, right? To evaluate and compare. And, in a post-November 22 GPT world, if you will, we've been using a lot of retrieval augmented generation to come up with summaries and theses and things that otherwise would take a lot of manual effort. And we've found that we're now able to free up a lot of time to really delve deep into the qualitative aspects of the business than having to spend time looking and accumulating quantitative and metrics-based view of the business. It's easier to come up with a more objective way to quantify what synergies are and track them in a post-deal world, as opposed to having to measure everything using Power BI or Excel, as the case may be. And we're able to stitch together all of this and what we would call services that an M&A advisor would provide their client, but in a software-like environment by enabling AI in those workflows. But we see a tremendous release of time and consequently better output to the effort that we're doing. But I'd love to hear what you're experiencing with the product that you're building and your own customers as well.
Yeah, I'll talk about it from, let's say, like late due diligence through integration side of the M&A lifecycle. Having experienced that, in a separate company, I've seen kind of the ups and downs of doing it, and it was a nightmare having to do things in Excel and then having to kind of bring people together and have delayed meetings, and the point of M&A should be to realize the value out of the deal, right? At any point in time. But if you're not able to do it with the right processes, it becomes a mess. So where I've thought about how AI can impact M&A, at least through late due diligence onwards, is how easy can it be to scale some of the repeatable items? So planning an integration? What are some of the work streams that have to get involved? Are you using certain playbooks that you use over and over again, but have to tailor for certain types of integrations or certain types of situations? Being able to not just automate, I think there's three layers. There's doing things manually, there's automating where you can, and then there's applying AI to really kind of bring that to a whole new level. But if you're able to, let's say for a company that hasn't done a proper integration before, they don't know what kind of playbooks to use or work streams, for someone to just go in and, answer or enter a prompt that says, hey, I just acquired company X, they're in this sector, we are doing a partial or full integration. Let's go in and create a list of work streams based on these different functions and help me understand what do I need to do to define success of an integration. So that's kind of one example. The other examples are around like realizing the synergies. I think synergies play a big role in everything that you do with an M&A deal. I think those are just the areas. So if there's things that are done today that's completely manual, that's very much a headache, how do we automate that layer so you have things that can be automated in a point where folks can focus on bigger things, but that only gets you so far. So the next piece is how do you apply AI to the next level so that things can be done that are scalable and repeatable in a way where you don't even have to touch it. You just go in and say, okay, we just acquired company X. Here's the background of it. Okay, all right, let's put together the work streams, the playbooks. Let's have the team track it. Let's identify what's at risk for a particular deal, and then be able to track those over a period of time. Because then at the end of the day, you have to report that up to the executive leadership or the clients that you work with, things of that nature. So those are some of the things that I've been thinking about in terms of how do we impact AI or M&A at that level.
Got it. That's super helpful. I do have one follow-on question, Sohail. How do your customers think about parting with their data? Because what's finally going to make the algorithm or the product effective, while you can bring a lot of third-party data, right, to help benchmark, to create stuff, there's a whole bunch of proprietary data that the company needs to part with. And, everyone's so watchful and mindful about, oh, it's my data, it's proprietary. Is it going to fall into wrong hands? This instance of the product is sitting on the cloud. Is there going to be, a compromise or a leak? And then my secret sauce is going to be out. But with that reticence that most companies seem to exhibit about parting with their data, for the data set to be truly malleable to what your corporate needs are, how do you see your product, or what are you seeing to help companies overcome that challenge?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you were talking about having that level of trust and security. I would never use third-party data to train a model that would be used in our software, just because I think there's a lot of the data that's out there, the models that are being trained, I don't think they're at a point where they've been fully cleared from bias and fully cleared of some of the things that are out there that could produce skewed information. So what we would potentially do down the road, once we're at a point where AI can be implemented across the platform, is use existing customer data with, of course, their consent, and train our models using valid information, because of course it's the folks using the product and they're using their own data, they're applying it. Use that information to train our models, and then eventually use that to apply towards certain use cases within our platform today.
Super helpful.
Yeah.
Super helpful. I think we may be out of time now. Right?
Yeah, we're at time. I think that's it for today. I know we promised questions, but I think if you guys want any other additional information, you can come to one of us. We're happy to have a conversation. But I think with that, we're good for today. Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
We hope you enjoyed this episode and learned something new from it. If you have any questions or comments for us or any of our guests, please feel free to leave them in the podcast platform of your choice, or send us an email at editor@maadvisor.com. We would love to hear from you and get your feedback. And if you haven't done so already, please follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and subscribe to our M&A Alerts newsletter at the links in the description or on our website at www.maadvisor.com. This will help you stay updated on the latest M&A interviews and and trends and support our podcast to grow and reach more listeners like you. This is Roger Aguinaldo, the creator and founder of the M&A Advisor. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our M&A Advisor community. Until next time, stay safe and happy dealing.